everybody, it's me, Sugar Song, as always, and today is going to be something a little different and special. As you can see, I have a Mermacorno here. I believe its name is Shelly Shores or something like that. And I have the Shopkin doll, can't talk, and I'm going to transform the Shopkin doll to look like this particular Mermacorno. So let's get started. This will be my first time ever making something like this. And that is because Delightful is doing a big collaboration with all of her fans, which I am one of them. So let's get started. I'm going to remove the stuff that I'm not going to use on her, like her hat and her shoes, but we could always use that for another customization down the line. So here's what we're not going to use. Clumsy me. I'm going to try to put the doll onto the stand, so I'm just going to set that aside. And please excuse any hands or the position of the camera being in a weird spot. That's because I only have one camera and it can't really leave where it's at. It can't look down on everything. So I'm looking for something to hold back the hair, and I'm going to try to save as much hair as possible. But on this particular Shopkins doll, it does have a lot of glue in its hair, so I couldn't save all the hair really close to the scalp because of that reasoning, and I have to actually end up cutting into the scalp because I don't really have a jeweler's needle nose pliers at this time, but I do get all the plugs out at at one point. But as it is starting at right now, you'll see me kind of struggling. That's because there's a lot of glue in the hair, and I was like, ooh, when I was doing this. So, sorry, I'm talking loud because it's my first time doing this, so I'm really nervous for you guys to see it. Also, the collab video is out, and so is Delightful's wonderful doll that she made. So I will put those in the link in the description below, and enjoy me struggling. Okay, and as you probably saw a few times, that it's really, you can really tell that it's glued on there. But I'm going to move on to the next part of the stage, which is the yarn wefts. And I'm going to dunk the doll into warm water. She did not want to stay down, so just going to grab something quick for her to stay down in there and work on the yarn wefts. And this yarn was donated by my good friend Shannon. She gave me this yarn for this particular project, and I'm gonna do it every other one. It's gonna go the light color yarn and then the yellowish color yarn. Every other one's gonna be a different color yarn, or every little notch that you see over there. And I actually had to use a needle to thread it through. So it does take a lot longer than I thought it was gonna take, but I think the yarn wefts came out pretty good. If I ever do this again, I'm definitely going to comb them out a lot more. I just wanted to make it kind of look more like, I don't know, dreads in a way, or like more like sandy type things, sandy color type thing, by not combing it out all the way. So it was intended to look like it's going to look at the end. I'm also going to be making a wig cap for this particular doll, so you'll see that kinda. I follow a tutorial how to do that and how to make the yarn wefts pretty much, so I'm not the best person to know how to do that, but I will put a video at the end of this so you can know who I learned it from. Sorta. I kinda went with the wind at one point, so you don't really get to see that part, but you can watch me struggle on the yarn getting through each individual hole in this little mesh board I have over here to help me keep them tied on so I can comb them out. Sorry that you can't really see very much in this particular shot. I was trying to get another part of me combing out some more yarn wefts. I do make a few more of these that aren't on camera, and don't worry, I do save all the fluff that you see kind of coming off of it. I'm gonna try using it for other projects or what have you. I don't know what most people save them, so I'm gonna save them too. You never know when it will come in handy to fill up like a stuffed animal or what have you. But yeah, just ignore the sunlight because I don't have any shades in my room yet, and eventually I will get some, and it won't look so crazy as it does right now. I feel like that one turned out way better than the other ones. Onward to the next part. We got some acetone nail polish remover, 100%. And I'm going to take off the factory paint now. I can't go into the hairline quite yet because there's still all those plugs in there, and I'm going to have to cut in there to remove the rest. I do try my best using the scissors I have, because it's the only thing that is like really thin that I have besides like a needle. But there she is, all cleaned up, and I'm not gonna do too much of like taking off the factory paint off the doll because I'm going to cut off the swimsuit eventually. So here I go trying to get all those plugs out, but like I said, I'm gonna have to glue it or cut it up and then glue it together. So you'll see that here in a little bit. And as you see, I just cut her open and got the rest of her plugs out. Now I'm just using the tacky glue and a free rubber or hair tie to hold it together so that way it can dry. And while that is drying, I'm going to start cutting the raised look off of her, because Shopkin dolls, they have really hard plastic tops usually, and I needed to remove it for the epoxy sculpt to lay on there flat. So I did hurt myself a few times with this X-Acto knife, but that's okay. You know, gotta pour some blood to get looking nice. Just joking. And I do use some sandpaper later on to really get it looking nice. You don't really get to see that in the video too much, but I do end up doing that. Alright, you can kind of see in this shot that I'm gluing down the yarn onto these plastic bags to make the actual wefts. I have plenty leftover Mod Podge that is glossy, so I use that to glue them onto the bags. I don't know if that was the best option, but like I have a surplus of this like gloss glaze, so I figured that it wouldn't look too bad if I just did that and really hid the glue layers. I don't think it turned out that terrible at the end because it's so thick of the yarn that you couldn't even tell I did that. But when I was removing it from the plastic bags, I was very scared that it wasn't going to work out. But it ended up working out fantastic, actually. So I'm kind of glad I did do that because I have a surplus of it. So I'm just laying down the glue, like a trail for it to hold on to the plastic bag, and then I put another layer on top. I was following the tutorial how to do it. So, like I said, I will put that in a link in the description below to that particular video, how to make your own wig caps, that the tutorial that I followed. And ignore me every time I come into frame. Like I said in the beginning, I only have one camera at the, well, I do have two now, but at the point of this recording, I only had one camera, and it was the one that I have plugged into my computer, and it can't really leave the computer area, so this is the only angle I have, as it is right now. Eventually I'll get another angle, but for now, you're just gonna have to deal with the crappiness. And I guess this is what happens when you have your first time doing something that's crafty and that you don't really do very often. So I hope that you're still enjoying me struggling like hardcore. And as you can see, it's super satisfying to pull off the whole yarn weft. I did have a couple mistakes in there, but I just kind of like took, just picked out the pieces that were kind of falling off, and it'll cut to where I actually have the wig cap done. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, especially since I couldn't really put it on to the doll when I was doing it. But as you saw, I have these pearls, and those pearls are actually pretty cheap from Hobby Lobby. I found them in the clearance aisle, and I was originally going to put some in her hair, but that never happened. It just, the actual yarn was too thick to kind of hold them, and as you see, I'm trying to show you how I was gonna try to put the part eventually when it goes on her. But as for now, we're going to move on to the epoxy sculpt. So I got my gloves out, and there's the epoxy, and going to do this for the first time, taking equal measures of epoxy, the epoxy sculpt here. I never worked with this stuff before, but it worked out really good. And yeah, I'm going to work on the fins and her chest, which is going to look like seashells eventually. And I also make her fins separate, but then I kind of put them together at the end. And her legs, I was going to like cut them down and stuff, but then I decided no, that would make a good like base for the epoxy sculpt to like hold on to. So I kind of keep her legs there. Um, and eventually you'll see what I do with the legs. I do end up like putting her in a seated position, and so she can't move from that spot, but I think it works out really well. And here I go. I'm just kind of, at first I was trying to get it to where she could move, but that ended up not working. So I'm just kind of like making her a little swimsuit off of like the epoxy sculpt onto the actual doll all around her, so that way it'll look nice at the end, so nothing would look super weird and it all be one kind of shape and like, I guess like texture. That's kind of what I was going for, because I cut into the dress or the plastic so much I didn't want like little stray hairs looking weird and stuff like that. So that's kind of why I worked with the whole body instead of just the front, and you'll see that here soon. And then I just kind of make like little balls to make her chest, and then eventually I kind of use like a little toothpick or something to, I think I use my needle there to like make the sculpture of the shells and stuff like that. And you saw how I take out the pearls right now. I'm trying to just get one off of it so I can like put it in the middle there for like an extra accent point in the middle of the shell bra that I'm trying to make on her. So that way there would be a hole for that particular bead once it came to the point when I was going to glue it in there. I do remove it and let it dry because I had to like cut down the string that was actually in the beads themselves. And I'm just continuing to form the rest of the epoxy sculpt the way I want it to look. Okay, so I did start trying to form out the leg. I was still trying to go on the notion that I wanted to kind of like move her and pose her and stuff like that eventually. But I end up not doing that. I kind of like scrap that idea, reform her kind of like bathing suits that she's almost kind of wearing at this point, and then redo the tail entirely. Because, like, right now, this is me trying to attempt to do the tail, and I was just like, this is not working. So I moved and shift gears into like a seated position, like I said before, and you'll see me trying to still kind of keep on the hope that I can like have her standing up on the tail. I even use the stand to like put a hole into the tail a little bit so that way like she can like be secure and stuff. Yeah, that didn't work either. So I ended up doing a seated position, like I said before. Anytime that you don't see me putting the doll in camera, sorry about that. I'm trying to like really do detail work, and I had to put it like really close to my face so I could see what I was doing, and I didn't realize how much I was actually out of frame. So keep that in mind. I'm still working on how I need to keep stuff in frame and stuff like that. So please bear with the cringe that you're seeing at this point. Ah, there it is. There's me readjusting the legs because of the fact that I decided to take all that off. As you probably can see, I was just like, ooh, that did not work out. I was like, I had to readjust everything, and I was trying to re-smooth everything down after my mistake there. So, yeah, that was a bad idea. Okay, now I'm working on the mermaid spins. I am still trying to go with the idea that I want her standing up straight. So I'm using the base from the Shopkins doll to try to get, like I said earlier, like it's staying up there without too much hassle. I even like thought at one point I won't remove it from the stand, but I ended up not going with that idea after it not work. So this is still the beginning stages when I was trying to be all fancy, and it just ended up not working. So enjoy the cringe some more. Okay, now I'm working on the accessories, and I'm trying to make a starfish and a tentacle from an octopus, and I do attempt to try to make some coral because the Murmurcorno that I am referencing does have like red coral inside of her and stuff like that, and pearls. That's kind of why I went with pearls for her necklace. Also, the Murmurcorno does have a pearl necklace as well. But the coral ended up not really working, so I decided to opt out on the coral after I saw it painted and everything. And I do attempt to like kind of like stamp the epoxy sculpt with some shells that I have laid out. I ended up buying this whole big bag of shells from Hobby Lobby that had some painted and had some that weren't painted. So I ended up painting some of the white shells this purple to match the shell brow that eventually will be painted to be purple, and also the unicorno has purple shells in its hair, so I used that paint to make sure that I had more shells that were purple in all that stuff. And I did look up to see if there was red starfishes, and there are. They're just not as red as I make them. Now, as you can kind of see, I did end up forming the epoxy sculpt to the doll. I do use her feet as a base, and I just kind of like ended up swiping some like kind of like grooves into the tail, so that way it didn't look so uniformic. I did that because in Sims they kind of have that kind of like flowy type pattern for one of their fins, and I really like that idea. So I kind of like took that idea and put it onto this particular doll, so that way it didn't look completely uniformic. It kind of like had this like flowy feel to her actual tail. And back to working on some of the accessories. Eventually I'm going to put something underneath her tail so it doesn't flop down anymore, but I didn't think about doing it right now. And there's a still shot of the mermaid drawing with the scissors holding up her tail so it won't flop down anymore. And then I worked on getting her whole body painted that blue that you see on the Murmurcorno. At first I thought I would do the sandy color on the bottom, but then I decided not to because I didn't think it would look as good. So I just kind of ended up painting it all blue and then kind of doing some cool shading that you'll see later. And I do dust on a little bit of the sandy color on top of the tail, but it's not going to be that big of a transition that you see in the actual Myrmecorno there on the bottom. But I do end up using a regular paintbrush because the sponge wasn't really doing a good job. I thought I would sponge on the color so that way it would look more like a airbrush effect, but that ended up not working. So I ended up not doing that for too much longer. I was like, I can't even get to these little crevices with this brush. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go back to my regular brushes and really brush on what I need to do. I do end up leaving a lot underneath away, not painting too much on the bottom, just leaving it that gray color. As you probably saw, I do have a hole for like the stand, but she can pretty much sit by herself without the stand, so I kind of end up not using it at the end, but I still didn't want to fully give up on that, but I end up giving up on it eventually. So this is just going to be the first base coat, is this blue that you see her being transformed into with my paint here, and it's not too bad of a blue color, so I think it looks pretty nice on her at the end. All right, moving on to the accessories. As you can kind of see, I do have the shells there, which I am painting the nice purple. You kind of can't see that in the frame here. Sorry about that again. But I am painting this kind of like dark purple, all the little shells that are like these the same kind of shells that you saw on the Murmurcorno just a moment ago. I wanted like some of the like shells that were like pointed and some shells that weren't, and yeah, so that's what I'm doing there. And you'll see here in a second I move on to the actual starfish, and I paint that red, and the little coral that's sitting there, I do paint it red but end up not using it. And then the little octopus tentacle, which I end up making red as well. Alright, and as you probably can see, I'm almost done doing that. And I'm going to move on to dusting the actual fin here with the other colors. I have like this like sandy color that I wanted to do, and a kind of like this like coral blue type thing. It's almost like a green in a way, to like make it more like ocean type colorings, and that way it didn't look completely uniformic. So that way it looked more like how like an ocean would, with different colors of the water. And that's kind of why the etchings were perfect, because like it did give it a kind of like a dried, or kind of like an ocean theme in that way as well. So that way it would go on the raised parts of it and not in the complete crevices. And I'm really not putting so much paint on there. It's like a dry painting way to do it. As you probably can kind of see, I hope. And then eventually I do paint the shell bra the same colors as the shells that you see on the counter there. onto the micro glitters, I just kind of like sprinkle them onto like her tail area, and this really nice glitter that I have here, just while the paint is still wet, so that way it would hold on to there until I could like spray it with Mr. Super Clear. I have this darker blue that I do kind of like in a weird way, and I kind of blew some of it off so that way it wouldn't be so deep in the crevices there. I was like, that can't happen. And as you saw, I just like tipped it over so that way it would go down a little bit. Some of these micro glitters I just got, so not all of them are open. And I was blowing some more of the actual glitter off. But I made sure that that kind of followed the same kind of grooves and the same kind of like way and stuff like that. So just trying to make sure that everywhere is kind of like covered in these like glitter type stuff while it's still drying, semi-drying, because it was pretty much almost dry by the time that I was putting the glitter on. So wanted to make sure I did that. Onward to the next part of this repaint, I do go outside and spray it down with Mr. Super Clear. Thank you, Dad, for taking the video. I know that you aren't really good at cameras, so thanks for doing that. So this is kind of actually several days later. I'm finally putting on the face. I was very nervous to actually do this because I was just like, oh God, here we go. So I was like trying to get my stuff ready, and I didn't have everything ready. I was like, I don't know. I was just terrible at doing this. I was just like, I don't know. It took me a long while to get the face done, and I do most of it off camera, but I did want to show a little bit of it while I could, because I was trying to get it done as fast as I could because of the fact that I had a bigger time restraint than most of the people, because I had to go to a wedding towards the end of the month, and it needed to be in before the 4th of the next month, and I was going to be gone around that time, so I didn't have all the time in the world to work on this. So I had to get it done a little bit sooner, and I went straight into using the paints because for some reason, I don't know why, but I decided that I think the paints will look nicer, so I decided to just go full force and just start up with the paints. And I should have just done it with the color pencil first, like most people do, and then work on the paints when I needed them. But ended up working at, hopefully you think so too, I think it ended up working at the end, how I ended up doing it, just because I feel like it turned out okay. I should have stopped because like I was letting it dry and I ended up touching it and like screwing up my whole face, so I ended up having to redo it again. So that's kind of where that ended up coming out at. I didn't realize how much my actual face got into the frame at the time. I was just like, okay, well then. I was just like, oh, this looks terrible. So I was like, okay, I need to find something to clean that off because it looked absolutely terrible. So enjoy my grief and also my little bit of struggle here trying to get the face right. I know that I could have been better, but I still think it looked okay at the end. as you saw, I did the white of the eyes first, and then eventually I did do the iris of the eyes. I had to redo it because I ended up screwing it up, so this is the final look. And I did do another spray of Mr. Super Clear outside. After everything was done, I just sprayed her down one more time, but with like a less coat this time around. And now I'm going to get the glosses out, a matte gloss and a shinier gloss for the eyes and lips. And I'm working on that next and kind of getting her wig cap at the ready. I probably didn't need to put all this matte liquid text onto her, but I decided to do it anyways because if she fell or anything like that, she would be protected. And I just make sure I do it on like her body and stuff like that, so that way nothing would fall off after I did everything. So it's kind of what I ended up doing. I don't know why. And then I ended up doing the glossy stuff too, like I just said. But as you know, I didn't open this yet, so here's some watching me open this all super slow. I thought that was like, oh, felt so good doing that. So I wanted to make sure that you guys got to see the full depth of that one. And then I ended up putting too much of that stuff on my paintbrush, and I was just like, so much. Why did I put so much? But I ended up getting it under control after a while, so. Okay, and I decided to put some white into the starfish and into the octopus tentacle just because I thought it looked kind of plain, and I end up doing a glossy finish on them too so they look more wet. I thought that turned out really good, and like I said, I just chucked that coral off to the side because it just looks so stupid. I don't even know what I was trying to do there. It just looked dumb. But I ended up painting it anyways. I was like, I can salvage it, right? No. The answer was no. Alright, you can kind of see me gluing, like kind of like a band of glue around her. That's because I wanted to give her a string for her bra to like be held up with something, and then that little string that you kind of see by the starfish there, I think I used that to make the bow in the back, and then I just glue that onto the back as well. You can't see it. Oh, that's the string I use. That extra string is for, I don't think it's for anything else. But I'm trying to tie a bow, a really tiny bow for this back piece, so that way it looks more like how a shell bra would look. At least that way it looked like it was being held up by something and not just there. So that's kind of what I'm doing, or trying to attempt to do right now. It does end up working. I know you can't really see it in the pictures, which is going to be coming up soon, but it's there. So that way it I felt better about it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So I'm just gluing it onto her back right now and hoping it stays there. And then I'm gluing in the bead in the front so that way it looks nice. And I was just like, this glue sucks. This Elmer's glue sucks. And then I was just trimming off the sides of that string so that way it looked more nice. And then I had to wait for it to dry. And now I'm working on the pearls. I ended up ditching the pearls I had ready because it was too short. So I'm like trying to make sure that I have it's perfectly right, and then I'm just kind of like tying them together, and then I use the glue to hold them together, and then I just use my scissors and chop off the excess because that was the easier way of doing it. And then I end up gluing on a shell in the front, so then that way you couldn't see the tied on piece basically, so that way it looked more nice at the end. So, the final stretch, finally, here we go. Finally putting on all the shells into her hair, and this is how her hair ended up laying out after the fact that I had it in there. So I was like, I'm just gonna work with what I got here. I have these really cool, like, little bubble things that I'm just gonna glue on there, so that way it looks kind of like, I guess sea foam or bubbles or whatever you want to call them, kind of like flowing up onto her. And I think that ended up looking really nice. And I put one in her hair so that way it would pull that piece back. And now I'm just gonna glue on all the other shells that I had prepared, and all the extra accessories that you'll see with this wonderful glue bottle. I don't know why I didn't use something else, but that's what I ended up deciding. I think I said it wrong. I don't think I do put a shell on her necklace. I think I just put the tied in part of it in the back where you couldn't see it anyways. And I kind of like how her hair kind of turned out where it looks like sand kind of like flowing into the river in a way, or into the ocean as it were. We don't really have oceans where I live, so I had to take all the pictures at a river. I think it ended up working out still well for the tropical theme because it's sand and it's shells, and most of the shells are more tropical themed than anything else because we don't have shells here. We just have crappy rocks that hurt your feet. So anyways, enough of that. I was like, stay on there, shell. It kept on wanting to like kind of like slide down. I was using the wrong glue, guys. Should have went with the better glue. So this is like the home stretch of like the fun part that was for me, the final part that was like the best. So you'll see her here in the pictures very soon. Alright guys, here she is all done and in all of her glory. I have given her a name. Her name is Shelly. I have named her after the Mermacorno, but I'm not sure if I'm still saying the Mermacorno's name right or not. I'm sure I'm not. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did like this, please leave a thumbs up for this video. That'll let me know if you want to see more like this, because I definitely want to make more customization dolls and work a little bit harder on it. I did work really hard on this one. It's just I see a little tidbits here and there that could have been refined, but I didn't have all the time in the world to do this because I was going to a wedding. But with that being said, I hope that you'll head over to Delightful's channel and to see the mega collaboration of hers of the tropical themed. Shelly is in there, so be on the lookout for her. And thanks guys for watching this. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!